I promise you, by the end of this episode, you'll never hear someone say women make careless decisions about abortion without immediately knowing exactly how to demolish that argument with facts, logic, and a little righteous anger. But first, let me tell you about a research study that made me want to throw my laptop out the window and burn things.
There's a different way to think about mental health, and it starts with slowing down. Sometimes the longest way around is the shortest way home, and that's exactly why we're taking the Scenic Route. Hi, I'm Jennifer Walter, host of the Scenic Route podcast. Think of me as your sociologist, sister in arms, and rebel with many causes. Together, we're blending critical thinking with compassion, mental health with a dash of rebellion, and personal healing with collective change. We're trading perfectionism for possibility and toxic positivity for messy growth. Each week, we're exploring the path to better mental health and social transformation. And yes, by the way, pretty crystals are totally optional. You ready to take the scenic route? Let's walk this path together.
Hi, welcome back to the Scenic Route, where we want to better understand why the world works the way it does. I'm your host, Jen, and this week I'm serving up a double shot of feminist fury, so consider yourself warned. Two completely different things landed on my desk this week that got me fired up and made me want to burn things. But then, as the often reasonable adult that I am, I stepped back, paused, and looked at them together, not as singular cases, but as pattern. And I realized they were telling the same story about how our society treats women's bodies. So let's go. So, part one. I stumbled across I don't even remember what I Googled, but it was the result of a Google search. I stumbled across a 2019 doctoral thesis from the University of Zurich, which is also the university I did my bachelor's at. And the title alone made me want to hurl my laptop across the room. The title is, I kid you not, Does Endometriosis Affect Sexual Activity and Satisfaction of the Male Partner? Yeah. Okay, so let's recap our knowledge of endometriosis, right? It's a disease where tissue that's supposed to line your uterus grows in random places in your bodies, on your ovaries, bowel, bladder, sometimes even in your diaphragm. And every month, it swells and it bleeds inside your body or inside your muscle tissue with nowhere to go. The pain can be so severe that women vomit, pass out, can't work, can't walk. We're talking panic attack level pain. And it affects roughly 1 in 10 women. That's about 190 million worldwide. There you go. It's one of the leading causes in infertility, but it doesn't stop there. It causes bowel obstructions, bladder dysfunction, and it increases your risk of certain cancers. Some women lose organs, and it takes an average of 7 to 10 years to get properly diagnosed because women's pain is often dismissed as normal period pain or just in their head. So you'd think with a condition this widespread and devastating, research funding would be plentiful. No, wrong. Of course not, right? In 2023, the National Institute of Health in the US allocated just $29 million for endometriosis. That's roughly about 0.038% of its budget. But hey, maybe just money is tight. Yeah, one could say. But meanwhile, erectile dysfunction research pulled in 6 times more funding between 2019 and 2023. So, yeah. And it doesn't really stop in the US, of course. Globally, only about 5% of all health R&D funding goes to women's health. And that's not just gynecology. It's for everything related to women's health. So against that backdrop, researchers, doctoral candidates could decide to contribute something to actually enhance this field. But no. This one dude, he went and thought, hey, you know what I could do? I could study how this devastating condition affects men's sexual satisfaction. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Look, studying how illness affects families can be legitimate research. But here's the thing. Endometriosis research is already criminally underfunded. Women are already told their pain is normal or is in their heads for years before getting a diagnosis. And when researchers finally do pay attention, the question becomes, but what about the men? So this is part of what Criado Perez calls the default male problem in her book, Invisible Woman. Go read that. She shows how women's experiences are consistently filtered through someone else's lens, usually male, usually external. She also reminds us that until 1993, women weren't even systematically included in US clinical drug trials. That means modern medicine was literally built on male data, treating women as deviations from the norm. And if you ask why, the reason that's often quoted is, well, hormones. Hormones make it really difficult to do drug trials. Well, no shit. We all know hormones are the fucking obstacle of everything in our lives. We know. Thank you. Anyway, so research finally pays attention to endometriosis, and the question is, what about the men? But hey, hold on to that frustration because we're adding something to it. And we're going to connect it to something that at first looks different, but is part two. Okay. So picture this. I'm already fired up and want to burn things because I found this endometriosis paper. And then because the universe has a twisted sense of humor, I stumble into an online argument. So disclaimer, these days I rarely do online arguments because and 99.9 of cases, that's completely wasting your time. But I stumbled into this argument because I also didn't expect it. It was on LinkedIn, on all places. Like, I'm not going on Reddit to start arguments. I know better, but LinkedIn of all places. And it's about a topic that I just really cannot shut up. And that's women's healthcare and women's right to choose what's right for their body. So it was basically a post on like how a lot of policymakers want to go back to the 80s because the 80s were such a great time for everyone. And this post was kind of like listing things why the 80s were not a great time for women. And then someone commented on the post saying, well, but the abortion rate, something about the abortion rate was much lower in the 80s. That was better. Then he concluded his argument saying, oh, women just like get abortions carelessly these days, like it's nothing. And like the German word he used is leichtfertig. I don't know if there's a literal English translation, but it's kind of like careless. You make this decision carelessly, like it's nothing. It's kind of like, oh, should I wear my blue or my red purse to get an abortion? Like that kind of sentiment, okay? So now, of course, I could have scrolled on, but I didn't. So I dismantle it in 3 moves, and I'm going to show you how you can do the same. So I took one for the team, okay? 1. Move 1, logic. So that person, of course, as everyone, knows someone who knows someone who knows someone who had an abortion carelessly, who just kind of like thought, oh, I don't want to have this baby. Nah, I just get an abortion. Okay. Even if this had happened, and if you really know this person, sure, could be, I don't know what kind of friends you have. But picking one case and pretending it represents all, making a rule out of one case, is what we call an inductive fallacy. It's like saying, Peter didn't finish this book, so this book gets finished by no one, right? We all laugh at that example, but when it comes to women's reproductive decisions, I don't know. People forget how logic works. Mind-blowing. So we have inductive fallacy. Now, out the window. Go. Bye. Next. Move to research. Well, we actually do have a lot of research and studies on the circumstances, and they show that a vast majority of cases, abortions are performed after very careful consideration and under difficult circumstances. Those could be financial hardship, health risks, violence, lack of support, and so on. So the whole process of getting an abortion, ending a pregnancy, is usually associated with a lot of stress, anxiety, and in a lot of cases, considerable social and psychological strain. It's far from a lighthearted decision. We have one study, the Turnaway study, who followed women for 5 years after an abortion or being denied one. Let's be real, 5 years is a long time. That's longer than most of you keep your fucking phones. So 95% said abortion was the right decision years later. Women who were denied abortions were more likely to end up in poverty, stay in abusive relationships, and face health problems. That does not sound careless to me. That reads more like survival. Move 3, moral. So we have the moral component of this. Calling women careless isn't about facts. We've established that. It's a power move. It's saying women can't be trusted as reliable decision makers for their own lives. It's undermining autonomy, and it's deeply infantilizing, treating grown women as if they're children who need supervision, guidance, or correction, rather than adults capable of weighing complex circumstances. And usually in the moral move step of the process is usually where the harm argument comes in. Opponents of abortion often say, but abortion like ends the life of the baby. It harms the baby. And like, you should do no harm. Kind of like the moral argument of that. And that sounds simple, but morally and philosophically, it's really not. Because the key debate is who is recognized as a full moral subject with rights. Is it the pregnant women, personhood and autonomy, or the fetuses, right? So, yeah, it can't be both. That's the truth, right? And for me, a pregnant woman's personhood and autonomy are undisputed. She's a citizen, a rights-bearing subject, a woman, a human being whose decisions shape her entire life. And that's not just me, but that's the key for most religion, laws, and like philosophies. The fetus, on the other hand, has a more contested moral status. Different traditions answer this differently. Some religions grant full personhood at conception, others at viability, others at birth. And of course, laws also vary across countries. But I mean, just think about granting full personhood at conception. That would mean you would owe child support, not from the moment the child is born, from the moment of conception. I don't think that's the law in any country. Like, makes no sense. So it's either and or. It's not. We're not cherry picking here. Okay. So the harm claim only works if you start from the premise that the fetus has equal or greater moral status than a woman. But that's not a universally agreed fact. It's a belief rooted in a very particular moral culture and religious tradition. So when people say women abort carelessly, they're not making a neutral moral claim. They're deploying morality as a tool of social control, one that infantilizes women, delegitimizes, that's another English word that's killing me, their decision-making, and upholds a hierarchy where women's autonomy is never fully their own. So, and now we have these two stories side by side. One about endometriosis research, and one about abortion debates. They all look very different, but they're driven by the same kind of like undercurrent. Women's experiences, pain, women's decisions making are not valued in themselves. Women's reproductive decisions are scrutinized and regulated. Women's medical conditions are studied for their impact on others. And this is not coincidence, this is structural. We have, for example, Emil Durkheim, one of sociology's founders, called morality a social fact. In other words, morality isn't just about personal conscience. It's something society creates collectively. It exists outside of us, it pressures us, and it tells us what counts as right or wrong. Its function, Durkheim argued, is to hold society together, to keep order. But here's the thing, order is never neutral, right? Some social facts don't come from nowhere. They're shaped in a world already structured by inequality. So when a moral story about abortion becomes women are careless, that's not a timeless truth. It's society enforcing an old pattern. Women's autonomy is always conditional, always subject to external approval. And if we, for example, add Foucault into the mix, if Durkheim shows us that morality is collective, Foucault shows us how morality is used as discipline, power doesn't operate through policies or laws necessarily. It runs through everyday language, institutions, research, and norms. If we call women careless and act as this is not a personal opinion, it has the tendency to become a disciplinary tool that shapes how women are treated, studies, and even how they see themselves. So if we look at Durkheim and Foucault together, we kind of like see a bigger picture, right? Morality as a social construction that holds society together, but one that's deeply tied to power. And in the case of women's health, that power works to sideline, to question, and to control. And, these two stories, they aren't just random irritations. They're symptoms of the same deeper structure, a society that systematically filters women's bodies through suspicion, neglect, and control. And we see this not just in these two cases, we see it in the whole tradwife argument. We see it in this new resurgence of the women's place is home. So that's that. And as always, I just don't want to show you what's wrong. I was kind of like, want to show you, okay, what can you do with this? So here's kind of like your toolkit. If you encounter something like this, you can do the logic check. When someone generalizes about women, ask, what's your sample size? One friend of a friend, a friend of a friend of a friend, a headline, actual data. And spoiler, 9 times out of 10, it's just kind of like vibes dressed up as evidence. You can do the evidence check. Look at who's asking the research questions. Whose perspective is centered and whose perspective is missing altogether. You can use this episode as a conversation starter, not to like change minds overnight, but to plant seeds, right? Because in my experience, every revolution starts with like a raised eyebrow, a good story, or being around a fire burning shit. That's deeply healing. And you can do a personal audit. Be brutally honest. Do you secretly hold women to a higher bar of proof? Do you expect women to explain their choices in like a TED Talk while men just kind of like get a free pass? And like, oh, why did you do that? And then when he does it, it's just kind of like, oh, he did that. Okay. If yes, congratulations, you found a cultural bug in your brain and it's time to uninstall. So listen, the scenic route isn't always comfortable. Sometimes it takes us through anger, frustration, grief, but it helps us to see the hidden patterns shaping our world. Sometimes they're hidden or less hidden, depend on me. You get it, right? So today we'll look at 2 stories, like a doctoral thesis on endometriosis and the tired old abortion myth of the careless women. And found they're chapters of the same book, a society that systematically sidelines women's autonomy and experiences. The next time you hear someone claim women make careless choices about abortion, you'll know exactly what to say. And the next time you see a research that sidelines women's pain or women's experience, you'll know to call it out for what it is. So thank you for taking the scenic route with me today. Until next time, and keep asking all the uncomfortable questions.
And just like that, we've reached the end of another journey together on the Scenic Route podcast. Thank you for spending time with us. Curious for more stories or in search of the resources mentioned in today's episode? Visit us at scenicroutepodcast.com for everything you need. And if you're ready to embrace your scenic route, I've got something special for you. Step off the beaten path with my Scenic Route affirmation card deck. It's crafted for those moments when you're seeking courage, yearning to trust your inner voice, and eager to carve out a path authentically, unmistakably yours. Pick your Scenic Route affirmation today and let it support you. Excited about where your journey might lead? I certainly am. Remember, the Scenic Route is not just about the destination, but the experiences, learnings, and joy we discover along the way. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to seeing you on the Scenic Route again.